My little bag of tricks with me. I'm Maisie Schruffler. I've been a death midwife for a couple of years now. I trained in Los Angeles, California, and before that I did massage therapy and reflexology. So I've always been in the healing arts in some capacity, and becoming a death midwife was just a natural progression for me when I retired from being a massage therapist. So I'm going to hand you all a little outline of what we're going to talk about today, hoping that doesn't fall. Okay. It's my cheat sheet. Also, my dress is about 4 inches too long, so if I fall on one of your laps, just pick me up and turn me around. We'll keep going.
Normal.
It's normal? Oh, okay. He said that's normal.
It is normal. I'm 5'1" on my tallest day, and it's hard to find the kind of dresses I like to wear that don't drag on the floor. I think there's 2 here if you want to hand one to this little lady. Thank you. There's 3 here. Take one down, pass it around. I'm not sure for all of you what it is. It's not. Did everyone get one?
Back here.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. And then over there.
You, 2, thank you.
T-Rex arms, sorry.
And let's go back there.
I'm doing 5'2". I hear what she's saying.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the vigil. I looked up the actual word for vigil. I found it really interesting. Vigil is obviously from the Latin, and it means awake. And it's interesting because we're sitting vigil when someone else is not awake, and that's literally what it means. It's a period of keeping awake during the time usually spent asleep, especially to watch over and to pray. It's a stationary, peaceful demonstration in support of a particular cause, typically without speeches. So when we're doing a vigil, we don't want to be talking a lot. We want to sit and listen and be present for the person on their deathbed. The second definition I love, it's typically on the eve of a festival or a holy day. It's observed as an occasion or religious observance for nocturnal devotions. And I found it interesting that vigil is associated with the eve of a holy day. And when we're sitting vigil, we're about to experience something holy. Whoever your God is, whoever your higher power is, there's holiness to be found in the transition of death. And the vigil is so extremely crucial, not just for the person who is experiencing their last breaths, but for the family members that are around them. And I thought of how I could present to you and help you remember some of the important things about sitting vigil. So I use the anagram vigil. So let's talk about V. V, I use the word vigilant. We are called to be vigilant when we are sitting bedside. We want to be on the lookout, be watchful, be observant. We want to recognize signs of distress, pain, discomfort, and ask available medical staff for help. When my brother passed away in June, my sister and I were sitting vigil with him in the hospital. And there's something that happens at the end of life called terminal agitation. And it's where you will have body twitches. Your body is shutting down, and your physical body becomes agitated. And you can get a fever. Like I said, you can twitch, you can have shivers, and you look like you're in a lot of pain. And for family members that are watching that, their loved one may not be in pain, their physical body is just agitated, but it's a horrible thing to witness. And worry that that person's in pain. And even as a death midwife, I wished I had a death midwife with me in the hospital with my brother, because he was having terminal agitation, and it was hard to get the nursing staff to listen to us because, you know, we're sobbing. This was unexpected. He fell on one day and he died the next day. And I wish I had someone there being vigilant for me and my sister at that time. So as you're sitting vigil, be observant, be vigilant towards your patient that is laying there. They need you. They need you to have a voice so that you can tell the family members, let me call hospice and see if a nurse can come. Let me see if the doctor can help here. Be observant and be vigilant for your patient. The second thing is be informed. The I in vigil is be informed. We want to know who it is that's laying there. We want to know what did they love in life? What did they do? Did they have a spouse that's passed before them, or a child? Oftentimes at the end of life, those who are transitioning will see people who have gone before them, and they'll call out that name. They'll say, Jonathan. And if you know, oh, she lost a son named Jonathan, you can comfort her and say, yep, he's there. Reach for him. You're almost there. You can encourage, and you can support them. And unless you're informed about who it is that is laying there, who you're seeing, ask hospice. Ask for as much information from relatives and friends as you can about that patient that you're visiting. In one of the homes that I worked in as a certified nurse, a CNA, we had a patient who had dementia, and she had fallen, and she was a mess. She should have been on hospice, honestly. And she was nonverbal as far as being able to communicate with us, and she fell a lot, which when you work in an assisted living home, a fall is the worst thing because it looks bad on the home, it looks bad for the staff that was there when a patient has fallen. And because this patient was nonverbal, we thought we couldn't get her to follow directions, and don't get out of your bed unless you have someone standing there. And a lot of the staff, I noticed, were treating her like she was retarded or incapacitated. And it just hurt me so deeply. And I looked around the room and I noticed there was a quilt in her room. And I thought, So when I approached my patient and I said, what did you used to love to do? And I'm looking at the quilt, and she said, quilt. She said the word quilt. Now, we all thought she was nonverbal. And as soon as she said quilt, I said, oh my goodness, I have some dear friends that were quilters. I started rattling their names off, and her eyes lit up, and she said, I know Marlene. Like, she started talking to me. So again, if you are informed about things that your patient liked or was into, you can relate to them, and you can open up so many things that could be very important to them as they're transitioning, leaving the things that they know behind and reaching towards the unknown. So be informed. It's your best, one of your best tools in your toolbox as a vigilante, a nice vigilante. Anyway, so then that leads us to G, which is guest. You must remember when you're sitting vigil, whether it is in a hospital room, at a facility, or in that person's home, you are a guest in their space. You are a guest at their deathbed and in the room of death for them. And you would want to treat them and their family members that might be there as if you are a guest, and an honored guest, a guest of honor at the table of death. And it's very important to stay humble, and a guest would not go in and do any of the dirty work. And there is a lot of work involved in dying. It's hard work. It's not, you see someone laying there, but they're not just laying there. There's a lot of work that's going on internally for them, and they need to do that work without you stepping in and running the show. Be truly a guest. Be truly somebody who has been invited in a sacred space to be as helpful as you can without, going to somebody's kitchen and serving the dinner for them. We wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that if we were a guest somewhere else. And so as if you were visiting your own dying friend's home, respectfully, quietly, give ear to your surroundings, even if there's no other family, it's just the two of you. Let them know, thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for letting me share this sacred space with you. I'm honored to be a guest at your death. And don't be afraid to say the word death, because when you're on hospice, you know, that's when we are preparing, and we need to take the stigma away from that word. To me, it's a beautiful word. I love it. And that leads us to I, which is intercede. We are there to intercede for that person, and it kind of goes along with being vigilant. We are a mouthpiece for that patient, and the more you know about what happens at the end of life, the better prepared you will be to intercede for them. I have a little Maisie Poppins trick in my bag that I would be so honored if all of you would play along with me. There's some things that happen at the end of life to the physical body, and one of the things is a very bitter sensation is in your mouth. Your digestive enzymes are no longer digesting food. Usually when you're sitting vigil, that person hasn't eaten in several days. They're not getting the oral care they need. So there's some bacteria growing. There's stomach acids that are coming up a little bit, and it leaves a very bitter taste in their mouth, and that could happen for days. It could happen for weeks. And I would like all of you just to let me give you a little taste of bitter tonight, just for a few minutes, and then I'll rescue you. But just to know what your patient is going through, what your client is going through. If you would be willing to let me do that, raise your little hand, and I'm going to come around, and I would like to put a little bit of bitter. It's coffee. It's instant coffee. There's no cream, there's no sugar. It's dry, and I'm just going to put a little dot on your tongue, and I'd like you to hold it there until I relieve you, if you'd be willing to do that. I'm going to come around the room now, and I would like to demonstrate just in a very small way, for a very small moment in time, what your patient might be going through and why it's important for us to intercede and be that person and rescue them. So I am going to, I thought of different ways to do this, and it's a little crowded. But if you could all take a cup, you're gonna dispose of what you don't need in the cup in just a moment. You'll understand. I just about landed in your lap. Lucky you. If I'm talking too fast and too loud, let me know. I'm deaf in my right ear, so I kind of talk
You're safe.
loud.
You're safe. You will see tomorrow.
Yeah, we know where, yeah.
I think there are some people here that want to be home. Let's see here. We did not get a cup. Here we go. Thank you. Okay, how about over here? Did everyone that wants to participate get a cup? Anyone? Oh, you stinkers.
We don't drink coffee on a regular basis.
It's dry. It's a little bit of dry. Oh, you hate me. Okay. All right. Now comes the fun part. So these are all brand new. I pre-cut them so it would be easier for me to pass out to you. I'm just going to dip it in some coffee. I would like you to stick your tongue out, my beautiful girl. There you go. And then go ahead and take that out and put it in your cup and just let the coffee stay on your tongue for a while. Now imagine that, people. Imagine that sensation for hours and hours and days even. I feel like a pastor, like I'm handing out communion or something. I am a reverend, thank you. With my death delivery, I did become an ordained minister. If you'd like to get married tonight, I can do that. Are you going to try it? I didn't think so. How about you, beautiful? Yes. Give me that tongue. Okay, just let that
I'm not a coffee drinker.
set in there. Just let it kind of roll around.
Especially
Some of
not
you are
now.
going to say, "Oh, I love
It's like,
coffee." Easy.
that convinced me. I've made wise
Are you going
decisions
to try?
before.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to squeeze in between here. Oh, stand up. Santu, santu, santu. There you go. Okay. You gonna try it? No. Oh, but your cup is ready.
I know, I would have done it.
You what? Oh, beautiful. Say no more. Say no more.
Start my day. Yes.
Okay. No? Okay, how about you? Yes. Yes. You're ready, willing, and able. One of the things I learned in death midwifery, we learned all different ways to get to know what you're doing, and it makes it easier for you. One of the hardest things that we had to do, if you want to put that in your cup, love, was feed each other. Because when you're being fed by someone, it's so humbling, and that really gave me some clarity on, gosh, it's hard to die. It's hard to have people do every physical thing for you. You're like, hurry up, Maisie, I got this stuff on my tongue.
She was first. She's going.
My brain's like, wow.
These activities can be a little hard and kind of maybe a little embarrassing, but it really gives you
I'm really trying to think about
pause for cause to know what your person's going through, and it really makes you think, oh gosh, yeah, let me quickly get you some relief here. Are you gonna try? Look at her, she's excited. She loves coffee, folks. There you go. That's for you. I'm gonna come around
Well, it
this
gets
way.
worse.
Here.
After it's in there for a while, it's even
I'm
worse.
sorry?
You know, just when you start out, you're like, oh yeah, it's tough, but
That's something I was going to say.
The longer it goes
As
on.
volunteers, I think it would be crucial for, I would assume that anyone that's a volunteer is going into a spot where there's already medical staff there. And if we could ensure that the medical staff has these swabs, there you go, listen that. Got yours, yeah. All you over there, you'll be the first to be rescued, fear not. You ready? Okay. Woo! Imagine this. Imagine every day, all day, having this in your mouth. You're getting morphine. You're getting other pain relief. You're hungry. You haven't eaten. You've got digestive acids coming up. All this bitterness. But you have to have the morphine because you don't want to be in pain. And you don't want to be fed because every time you eat something when you're on your deathbed, it just prolongs the process of dying. And I've got a story for you about that in a minute. You gonna do it? I love you. I love you even if you're not doing it, but I especially love you if you're doing it.
Could do better.
You're gonna do it, right? You ready, love?
It's funny that you could tolerate that.
Bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you. Oh, wonderful. There you go. Let that roll around in there. How is that? Oh, baby.
That'll,
like it, bud.
that'll cure him. You won't want that.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I miss anyone? Did anyone say no that wants to try after all?
They're like, no, that's it.
Going twice.
Second step.
Hit me again, Maisie. Hit me again.
There's a miracle on 34.
I'm gonna get my
Okay.
charting done tonight.
So now I'm going to relieve you of your bitter taste in your mouth. Most of these in facilities are glycerin soaked, but mine are not. So being the mad scientist that I am, and I make my own lotions and potions, of course, wouldn't you know, I have vegetable glycerin at home, so I made my own little concoction. And now I'm going to relieve you, my beautiful girl. Go ahead, and so what I would like for you to do is, I want you to swab your own mouth with one of these when you get them. We're all going to share the same one. I hope you're okay with it. You're all getting your own.
We're going green.
But these are straws, even underneath that sponge, there's a straw, so leave it in the wrapper or you're gonna get it all over yourself. But don't be afraid when you are swabbing one of your patient's mouths to really get in there and rub around their mouth, their tongue, their teeth. And you'll know how to do it because you're gonna do it to yourself right now. And the best way to learn is through experience. I gave myself a massage one time, I never got off the table. Okay. How, are you ready for some relief? Try and serve.
Yeah.
And tell me as you're doing it, I pre-cut these suckers, literally, there we go. How quickly that relief hits you and how nice that feels. It just takes away that bitter taste. And imagine laying there for days waiting for your baby girl.
Hurry it up! Hurry it up!
Ew, shooting
Oh,
fire.
totally different.
There you go, quickly now. She's ready, folks. Just swab your tongue, swab behind your teeth, on top of your teeth. When I was swabbing my brother's mouth in the hospital, my sister, who had not witnessed a deathbed vigil or even death up close and personal until we lost our brother, she thought I was torturing him, but I mean, these little sponges, they don't do any damage really. You can just get in there and get the job done. So what are you thinking
The
so far?
glycerin's fine, but the texture of the sponge. How could they? I don't know. It could be
Well,
soft.
when your tongue is dried out on your deathbed,
I mean, I suppose.
this
Yeah.
will be a welcome treat. I promise
Yeah.
you. I know you didn't want coffee, but would you like glycerin? Would you like a straw?
But it does. It totally neutralizes it. Like
It
in
neutralizes
seconds.
it.
Yeah.
Neutralize the situation. All right, love. Relief is at
Look at the
hand.
texture of that
Pun
sponge.
intended. I keep my puns intended. Thank you.
But like she says, for them, it's
Yeah.
probably okay.
If you're not a good swabbing,
She did that a couple of times with me today, and like, let me do that again.
I'd rather not.
I learned my lesson.
If we have these on hand in the room, just dipping one in water and rubbing around their mouth is such a loving act that can bring relief to that
Yeah,
dry,
You didn't. The
bitter
sponge
mouth
didn't
as
bother you.
as our life is ending. We typically
Really?
breathe through our
That's
mouths.
just
We're no
me.
longer breathing in. We just eat through our noses for mouth breathers, and our mouth dries out and it's bitter.
Did you get some yet?
Oh, that's just
Yeah.
helpful.
It was.
Soaky.
Well, just sitting here.
Gosh, you guys are being so patient. I'm appreciative
I'm
of
supposed to
that.
wear it on my head now.
There you go. Nope, missed
Keeps
this one.
throwing it at me. Right? Well,
I didn't know that.
I've already built it back up once. I think I'll just leave it down now. Very cute. Yeah, I'm gonna
Let's relieve some of these bitter,
To me,
bitter taste of death
I felt
here. Let's
chunks
relieve
of
that.
you'd forget if I was doing it.
Vegetable glycerin, by the way, mimics our own body's blood plasma. I use it in my lotions and potions because
they want
it's a natural product.
And maybe,
It's a natural
again,
sugar, and
Obviously,
our
I
body
don't know
knows how
what
to
it's like
absorb
to be
it.
at that stage, so it's probably way more suited
It's a plant.
for someone in that situation.
There you are, love. Okay,
Yeah,
swab away. Did everyone
glycerin
get a
did-
swab? Is everyone relieved? Is everyone
neutralizes the
wishing
bitter.
I was at their deathbed right now? No, not yet. We're not ready. We're not ready for that yet. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the informed, the I, because there's so many things, or interceding with that. Thank you for letting me do that, all of you. I appreciate that. That's fun. I love to see you suffer. No, and then remove you. So with interceding, you see how just a small act of kindness, a little water on a sponge, a little glycerin on a sponge, can go a long way to relieve that end of life natural thing that happens. And there's other things you can do. Bring items of comfort, the mouth swabs, bring extra pillows, let's see, blankets, hand lotions, straws, a hairbrush, face towels. I think that's all I have. Oh, music. I have on here playing soft music. Okay, that is all for that. Let me see here. Okay, yeah, so if you were to bring, if you knew that your client liked jazz or, well, here's an example. This is the story I'm just remembering now that I was going to tell you one of the stories. I had a patient who I was sitting vigil for, and I'll call her a client. My client was non-responsive. She was hours from death. She died that night, actually. And her family said she loved jazz swing, like old, like 20s swing jazz. And modern technology, I had an iPhone. I popped in jazz swing music from the 20s. And again, this woman had been non-responsive for over 24 hours. I was doing all the things that I like to do, swabbing the mouth. I polished her fingernails. I was just trying to bring comfort, repositioning her in bed. If I ever get to train you all on midwifery, we're going to have blankets and pillows, and we're going to have a slumber party, and I'm going to reposition all of you in bed. It's so marvelous. Anyway, I digress. I put this music on for her, and she sat up and was doing jazz hands, and it was like, oh my gosh, she's got a long way to go. She laid back down. She was so happy. Her face was so, and it was like her mouth was moving to the words and the swing music, and it was so beautiful. It was such a glorious moment to bring her something from her past into her present as she's reaching for her new present, which is going to be the past. So don't be afraid to, like I said, ask questions, be informed as much as you can so that you can intercede and bring them comfort, bring them water, bring them pillows, bring them music. And you're also, I'm going to tell a little bit of a sadder story real quick for a moment. I had a patient who was imminent. We all knew at the facility she was going to be dying. Most likely, we thought within the next 24 hours. She had some unresolved issues with family members, that there was drama in the family, and we had to say this person can't come in and this person can come in, and it was a real tightrope interceding for this patient on her deathbed. And there was one family member who was insistent on giving her Orange Crush. She loved Orange Crush as a drink, and when she was younger, it's one of her favorite things. And this person would come in the evening, and mind you, when you're imminent, when your body is closing down, you don't want to have soda pop or food, cakes, or anything like that, because when your body gets sugar in it, like artificial sugar, not like the vegetable glycerin, when your body gets artificial sugar in a concentrated amount, it comes to life again. Your body says, we're not done here. Let's get that digestion tract going again. Let's, especially if you're drinking something, you rehydrate. When your body's job is to fold into itself, just like when we're born, we're in that fetal position. We're coming out, and we come out, and it's painful. It's a journey. It's painful for the mother. It's painful for the child. Death is the same way, and a woman who is laboring for a long time often needs help to pass the child with a C-section, because it keeps going back up and back down. And it's the same thing when you drink or eat in the end of life, when you haven't had any food. The goal is to stop, remove everything that the body no longer needs. She didn't need that sugar. She didn't need those extra calories. It revived her. She wasn't going to be revived to the point of living a longer, healthy, productive life. She was going to be revived to the point of prolonging her death, prolonging that journey that we were all praying for. We're all, let her go. Hopefully tonight's the night. She lasted 2 weeks. She lasted 2 more weeks because this person kept coming in every night, getting a straw with Orange Crush, putting her thumb on it, and dropping it down my patient's throat, letting her have that liquid in her body. And I wished I could have said more. I wish I could have gone to that person and said, listen, you're stopping the process here a little bit. So eventually I did tell the husband, I said, I know this has been a long journey. I know we're ready. We're ready for her to say goodbye. We're ready for her to let go. I think we need to stop giving her anything. I know she loved Orange Crush. I was her voice piece. I was the mouthpiece to say, let's stop right now. Let's stop giving her this extra. I said that when I had that talk with her husband. She died 3 days later, so it still took her 3 more days to get all of that she had been getting from her aunt or her cousin. I'm not quite sure who it was, but it was infuriating for me because I couldn't say stop. You can't tell somebody when you're sitting vigil, if somebody's trying to help a loved one, you can't say, oh, no, you can't do that. You can gently encourage, you can recommend, you can be a mouthpiece for the person who's trying to transition to say, hey, did you know that when you that happens? So anyway, I'm not sure how I got on that tangent, but let's draw me back. I'm back, okay, back inside my body. I was having an out-of-body experience there for a moment. Vigil, and bingo was her name. The last thing is L, which is love. And the words that are associated with that is fondness, tenderness, and warmth. And if you are doing the V, the I, the G, the I, you will automatically be showing love. You are giving love to that person on their deathbed. You are a comfort for them. Be open to the miracle and profoundness of death and understand that our primary role is to bring comfort. Our primary role is to be there. One of the biggest fears people have about death is dying alone. We're afraid to die alone. We're afraid to be in pain. And having somebody sitting vigil with you, you're not alone. And having somebody interceding for you, we can help you not be in pain. And everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to have somebody being there for them, loving them in that moment, on that journey, and helping them get to that last task. Dying is a task. We are all going to be given that task. And how beautiful for us to be able to be with somebody when they're working their last job. It's their last job is to die, to let go, to let the body go. And I wrote a little poem that I would like to read for you called The Vigil. It says, I see you laying quietly upon your bed of death. Your tender heart and fragile lungs are whispering their last breath. I'll hold your hand and sit with you as life is changing fast. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. Your future's just the past. A past of love and grief and joy and seasons that you've weathered. Oh, what a sight. No, I'm sorry. And seasons that you've weathered. I see a smile, a tear, a nod. You sigh, no longer tethered. Oh, what a sight for these sore eyes to watch your journey end, with wings of angels rustling down to fly you home, my friend. So, that is my presentation to you about the vigil. If any of you have questions or would like to talk about death midwifery, how you can be a death midwife or death mid-husband, I don't know, what would we call you? A death husband, a deathman. Let's not say deathman. Yeah, I would love to answer questions. I do request if you keep these that you don't tweak them in any way and then redistribute them. If you're going to distribute them and use them, please use them in their original form. I am working on a curriculum to instruct and give certifications for death midwives, and this is my hard work, my research, and my experience doing this, so I would greatly appreciate that. My husband, my beautiful husband, is videotaping me tonight, and I'm going to be, hopefully will be editing it and putting it on my Mortal Beloved website. And does anybody have any questions about the vigil and what our role is as volunteers when you are sitting with somebody who's dying? Or does anyone have a story they'd like to tell about how something we've talked about today was actually done when they were sitting vigil with somebody? Bueller?
I guess I'm really curious because I've sat with a lot of clients, but these are clients that are still, for the most part, the two that I currently have engage really well.
Okay.
We converse, we play games, we talk.
Oh, great.
But I'm nervous to sit vigil because I'm just
okay.
not done it. I guess I feel like the anticipation of it being different than what I usually walk into makes me nervous.
Okay.
So I guess.
So what is it that you're nervous about? What is it that you like? Is it seeing somebody take their last breath? Is it hearing the death rattle?
I guess that all that watching falls upon me.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where it feels like heavy.
Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, like
what do I
like,
do?
Yeah, like I've got my blue book. I love it. I love like looking at where are we and how things are normal. And this is I get it. I like that, but I've never seen it in real time. So I feel like that makes me
Anxious. Yeah,
anxious. Yeah,
for
I
your
don't
first.
know.
Yeah, your first death.
Like when I walk into a room right now with the client, my client's either awake and conversing or asleep. Right? They're not.
Yeah. They're not inactive, dying.
So I guess how is that going to be different than, what does that look like for you all when you walk into a situation where it's visual? Because I've got this picture in my mind, you know how it is, even with death, and it's not like what it is in the movie.
Right. Well, a lot of, and again, when I became a volunteer with Ruth over a year ago, I just happened to get, I don't know if it's because I'm a midwife, I happened to get 8 patients who passed rather quickly. I sat vigil and they passed either with me or in the wee hours after I had just left, but I was with 8 people when they died. And you walk in, generally speaking, and by the time you're sitting vigil, they are not responsive. In general, a client is non-responsive. You've got family members that have been sitting there, they're exhausted, they want to go home, but they are so afraid of Aunt Margie dying all by herself. And even though she can do it all by herself, it's nice to have somebody there. And especially, like I said in the beginning, it's not just for the patient in the bed, it's for the family members that they're going to feel like they've let someone down if that person dies by themselves. And so we say, hey, I'll sit with them for you. Let me sit, so go take a nap, go take a shower. It's like being a new mom again. There's so many parallels to being a new mom and birth, and when we're dying, you know, the family's exhausted, they haven't taken a shower, they probably haven't eaten a good meal, and you show up in all of your glory and your splendor to sit, even if it's quietly in your band beard, to be with that person while they are transitioning, and so that family gets a break and they're not worried that their loved one is going to be alone. And one of the last things to go, we've been told, I haven't died, so I don't know. One of the last things to go is our hearing. So knowing and speaking soft words to that person when their family member has left, and some people need the family member to leave so they can let go. I've seen it. But being able to encourage them gently and softly that you're there, that they're not alone, that they can do it, and you're their last cheerleader. And you know, in life, like if you went on a vacation with some friends, you can only do so much with that friend, and then you go your separate ways. You're there to be a companion at the end of somebody's journey. You can only go so far with them, but you're there. You are physically there for them, and they just have to make that last little transition on their own. And it's not, for me, it's not scary. It's not terrifying. I've seen terminal agitation, not just with my brother. I've seen it in some of the patients that pass with me through hospice. And it is a little unnerving. It's unnerving to see somebody that looks uncomfortable. They get a glow on them, which I love the glow because I know, okay, their job is almost done. That can just cheer them on a little. They got a little farther to go. But again, as our bodies are slowing down when we're dying, our body gets rid of it, pushes out everything we don't need. And one of the things we don't need is our sebum, which is a thick oil in our skin. And so my patients will get a beautiful waxy glow. Their face gets soft. It looks like they just had a facelift. Honestly, you walk into some rooms, and the day before she was cursing someone out that because they didn't turn her quick enough. And that night I walked in, I'm like, she's a goner. All right, this is the night. She just had, her face was so soft and glowing and waxy, and it was just beautiful. And some people that can be unnerving, like, oh, they're sweating, they're sticky, but it's the end of life, and it can be unnerving. But if you know what it is, you're like, oh, okay, she get a warm washcloth and dab her face. And death is beautiful. To me, death is beautiful. And walking into, am I over talking?
No, you're good. I just want to, because Maisie would spend hours with these patients. Okay, so often we'll go and spend maybe 2 or even sometimes 4 or 6 hours, depending on
12
our
hours.
story. But yeah, but Maisie spent hours and hours with her family member. And so she had a little different type of experience because of her background, right? But we might walk in and we'll be a part of that journey more often than not. It just happened though that Teresa was present when her patient passed, and that can be part of our experience. But often we'll give 2 hours or 3 hours, and we'll be part of the chain of people who are going to bring love. I love that way of thinking. Bring love to that patient at that point in their journey. And we may not have as many experiences or even one really like that, because we're not going to spend those large amounts of time with that person at the end of life. That's not as common.
In other words, don't be afraid to keep volunteering and being on the Vigil team, because we need you. And the chances of you actually being with somebody when they take their last breath are probably slim, but if you do get the opportunity to sit vigil with somebody and the possibility that they're going to pass, do it. Do it. It will prepare you in the future.
I just want to share briefly, again, connectivity through visit notes. Diane Mirabelle, some of you guys know her. She's one of our experienced volunteers. And she was matched up with a patient who ended up, her initial visit ended up being a vigil situation. So sometimes you guys might walk into a situation like that where you think, oh, we're going to have an ongoing relationship, and you realize. And I wanted to share it because Diane just did such a good job. She sized it up right away. You know, she's been visiting a lot of patients, so she knew what was happening. And so she just went and she held her hand and she prayed with her, and she read a psalm, which psalms are always great in these situations. There's a lot of peace and comfort in the psalms, and I just felt like she really knocked it out of the park. And then she let us know, you know, this is where we left it, and I'm really glad I got to meet her. And that was that. So, you know, I think she was prepared in her heart, and she just went with it. So it's okay to not know how you're going to respond, but there's some suggestions for you that I thought were really good. She did a good job with it.
Yeah, and I had one situation where Ruth was called and they said, we're afraid our mom's going to die and we want a death midwife. Do you guys have a death midwife? And she said, well, actually I do. She's a pink-haired weirdo and she's on her way. So I got the call as I'm driving to this patient's house that she passed while I was on the way. So I did not get to be there for her, but I was there for the family. And there was some crazy stuff going on with the sisters. There were 5 daughters and 2 sons, and they were fighting over a bunch of stuff, and I was able to facilitate the situation and say, okay, you know what, for half an hour let's sing psalms. And she was Native American, and the Native American family showed up and the Christian family showed up. She was Native American, but she had become a Baptist or something like that, some Jesus-y thing, and they were playing music, and the one sisters wanted only gospel music, and then the other family said, no, we want her heritage, we want that Indian music. So we did both, and oh my Lord in heaven, when the son, who was Native American, got up with his daughter we had just sang Amazing Grace, we were all holding hands doing Amazing Grace, and then it was the Indian tribe turn. And you know, you get chills when you sing Amazing Grace, and you feel the spirit moving. And then this son started chanting in their native tongue, and we all burst into tears. It was the most powerful vigil that I have ever been to, even though the person was already deceased. And it brought such community to those children, the daughters and the sons, and it was like, wow, none of this other stuff matters. And we all just kind of were, I don't know if we were exorcised by someone, but it was so completely powerful that I didn't know what he was saying, I didn't know what he was singing, but it was such a beautiful experience. And I don't know how I got on that other than to say, we got a call, the person had already died, but you still show up and you still avail yourself. And then of course I did my weirdo little mortician stuff. I did the makeup and plugged the holes and got her ready because they wanted to have a little death vigil for her as well before the morticians came, or the funeral home came. So I was able to act in the capacity of a death midwife at that time, But beforehand, the family, that's what they wanted. They wanted a death midwife there. They didn't want their mom to die and them not know what to do. People think there's something you have to do when they're dying, but we all know we're all gonna do it. There's no manual on how to do it. It's just nice to have people there for you. And again, everyone deserves a death midwife. And I will shamelessly plug myself. It's moreToBeloved.com. It's a great profession to be in, and volunteering is amazing. And I really cut my teeth on a lot of my midwifery that I do now being a volunteer. And yeah, I encourage any of you that are considering vigil work, do it. Call me. I'll come sit with you. I'll vigil with you if I can. But yeah, so I think that wraps it up for me personally. I feel like I've gone way over my time, Ruth, and I'm sorry. Okay.
We have we used to have a very sizable vigil team pre-COVID, right? So that's part of our team this year is to kind of rebuild that. And the larger our vigil team is, the better, because very often, our schedules are not going to be compatible with that person's need or that family's need. So the more people that are on the team, the more likely we can serve the families who have a desire for that care. And so it's great to participate and be a part of that team. And a lot of times it's showing up at kind of an odd hour and just being present, right? Yeah. And families really appreciate it. The other thing that happens that you don't think of, but when you go to a facility and you sit with a patient for 2 hours and you just feel like, well, I came in and I left. And the first person we had do that right as COVID was ending was Tom Sutton. And to get him into a place was it was rocket science. But they had called him, wanted a vigil volunteer, and nobody had started doing that again. And so we did go to Moran Vista, and you have to go through so many locked doors because they really weren't letting people in. And so Tom did a fantastic job and just went and sat with the patient for 2 weeks. Tom stays a long time, so he was there for probably 4 hours. But that's what he did. He just was with the patient. And so what is so powerful in that setting, which is very simple, and of course you don't do it, is then the staff relax. So then the staff can relax because they know that person's not alone. And even though they cannot provide that level of care sometimes, even though they're in the facility, but they worry about that person a lot because they're afraid they'll die alone or not die with care. And so just being present for the staff is gigantic. It's huge.
We had a case too where husband and wife had been married 56 years, I believe, and he was just he couldn't bear the thought of her being alone, and the poor guy was just exhausted. He needed to go home and get a night's sleep, and Dave, Tom's brother actually, went and stayed all night. He stayed, he did a vigil all night long, and she passed about a half an hour after he left. And I was going with another vigil volunteer. We were gonna pick the baton up, and we walked in and they said, oh, she just passed. And so I just was like, Dave, you were right there when it mattered. That man could go home and sleep at a time when he really needed it and know that his wife wasn't alone. So that was another really powerful.
So we'll talk more about that, but thank you, Maisie, so much.
Yeah,
for
thank you.